Welcome to this episode of Cocktail Leadership. This is our first bonus episode, and we've got back with us Brian Kaiser, who, as you may know, joined us for the first episode of Cocktail Leadership. So, Brian, welcome and thank you.
Kevin, great to be back in video.
I know.
Great to be with you. Thanks.
We're trying to move with times and give everybody a full experience of not just audio, but also video. So Brian joined us, and if you heard the episode, Brian is the President and Managing Director of the Fuel Carrying Systems Division for TI Fluid Systems in Asia Pacific. And to put that into context, that's around a $1 billion business. And Brian has been in Asia for, well, this stint 17 years, but he had a prior stint there. And he's worked through automotive, and I'm really glad to have Brian back, because from the first episode and the feedback we got, people want to know more about Brian's leadership journey, but also they want to learn a lot more. So Brian, again, thank you for coming back.
My pleasure, Kevin. My pleasure.
And just reflecting back on that episode, I recall something that you shared with me immediately after we finished recording was you got an email, and maybe you'd like to share that with our listeners and viewers.
Just remind me again, Kevin, the email?
It was to do with pretty much what's in your background there.
Yes. Well, I started, as we've talked, it's been a journey, and I started thinking about coaching really about 4 or 5 years ago. And it was through the experience of stresses, I guess, from work and reflecting on life. What you're going to talk with, I think, with a lot of your guests on Cocktail Leadership is about purpose. It's about purpose in life and a company's purpose to, stand for something more than just the bottom line. And those are as a leader back in 2015, which was really the first time I ever really reflected and said, I need to think about doing something else. Our company people didn't realize at the time, but I was ready to quit. 2015, to set the stage, I had changed companies. I wanted a fresh start from the safety systems business, airbags and seatbelts. So I joined TI, but I was based out of Tianjin, China. So just for the listeners, it's about 1,000 miles from Shanghai, but my family was still living in Shanghai. So I was making this 1,000-mile trip typically on Mondays and Fridays, or Sundays and Saturdays. And it got to be where I was away from my family for those first 3 years. I kept track. The average was 195 nights a year. So almost 600 nights over 3 years I was away from my family. And that's when, as you and I talk purpose a lot, that's when I said to myself, is this really for me? It's against everything I stand for, which is all about family. And I'm away from my family so much. I almost lost my family. And I said, this is, I have to rethink myself. And then, like a miracle, just as I was going through those thoughts in my head, my predecessor, him, Kim, decided to retire. And he decided to retire, and his job, which was based in Shanghai, opened up. And luckily, I accepted. In early 2016, I was able to move to Shanghai again and be back with my family. So that was like a miracle. But, those tough times really make you think. And that's the first time I thought, okay, there has to be more. And it almost seems like my journey into coaching, every year there was something else. The first year in 16 was just beautiful. It gave me renewed vigor. Had a great team in Shanghai. A lot of the team in our China organization for this division, just a fantastic team. So 16 was a great year, but it was really 17. 17, we started with some whistleblower and audit compliance issues in China. And really for all of 2017, that was sort of like taking a right hook to the jaw. It took the wind out of us. And that also made me question my purpose. Is this, I can control myself, but can I really control the ethics and the compliance of other people? How can this happen? You start questioning, do we have the right structures in place? So that was, we got through it, but it was very difficult. You were part of that, very difficult. So 17 and 18 really were difficult with that. And 18 is where we were bought out by, actually we had been owned by private equity. We went public. Mm-hmm. And after we went public, increased scrutiny on the bottom line. So again, what you talk to your listeners about the bottom line, is it really all about the bottom line? Well, the first year after you go IPO, it is about the bottom line. And that was at 18, was a continued focus, cutting costs. We started to tell customers that we previously would give pricing to, negotiate, be more flexible. And we just said, no, we're not giving pricing. No. And we lost market share. And then you go to 19, and 19 was really the year that I said, maybe I need to think about coaching. 19, the China market dropped further, just the slump in the auto industry. And for my team, for your listeners, to give them an idea, across Asia, we have about 7,000 employees, and we have about almost 5,000 in China. And that year, we had to cut, in the first 6 months of the year, I cut almost 600 people from China. And 2019, I got to June of 2019, and I said, is this, again, purpose? Is this my purpose? Yes, I can do it. As a capable executive, you do what you have to do. You justify it and say, if I don't do this, then the rest of the organization, then the whole thing was going to go down. So you find ways to justify it in your head, but it's hard. And there's nothing, as a leader, there's nothing worse than having to lay people off. Nothing worse. So that's where, yeah.
It sounds like it was quite a hard, feels like the last few years have been pretty tough, and I just want to shed some light on, and maybe this is poking a little bit deep, but your mental health at the time, having to do this, because you just said that for a leader, laying someone off is the hardest thing you can do. But as a leader, there are circumstances where you have to make those calls, and you have to do the hard work. And how does that affect your mental health?
It definitely affects it. At the time you're going through it, at least for me, you find all kinds of ways to justify in your mind, like why you have to do it, and how, basically survival. If you don't do it, then the whole company could suffer, and the whole company could have further implications, and everybody loses their job. So it's not that it's the wrong thing to do. From a business standpoint, it's the right thing to do. And that's what you tell yourself. But mentally, if your core values, like myself, your core values are about family, relationships, taking care of people, making connections, if your values are linked with that, it's one of the harder things to do, because you can't sleep at night. I mean, I can't tell you how many sleepless nights I had just thinking about the people. And some of the people we let go were direct labor workers, and of course they don't make huge salary, but it doesn't matter what their salary is. You're thinking you're taking the livelihood away from somebody. And it affected me, looking back, Kevin, it affected me mentally more than I realized. I think it took me to go through coaching training to realize how much it affected me.
So what made you then, you're in June 2019, and you've gone through this, and you're like, no, this is not sitting well inside me. this isn't my purpose. Why coaching?
There's several influences, I think, through that journey. One of them was my predecessor, Kim, and we've talked about Kim before. One of the best human beings on this earth. I mean, geez, your life, you feel better having met him, really. And he was very interested in coaching. He was trained in certain areas of coaching, and he wanted to do that in retirement because he had retired. I took his job, and we spent a lot of time together transitioning. And he sort of influenced me about coaching. Maybe it was always something in the back of my mind I thought I might enjoy. So he was the first one. And then I had a high school friend who I hadn't seen in years, and I went out to visit her 2 summers ago in California. She lives in San Francisco, and she was into coaching. And there's 2 others. There was also somebody that we had met through our travels in Asia that lives in Bangkok, was a coach, and he actually attempted to coach our company people. So I met these people, and the thing that really put me over the hump, so to speak, is in 2018, we did our own HR leadership development program in China, just for the China team. And it was we called it the G2 program. It was for the Generation 2 leadership, which is sort of one level down from like a plant manager or a director level. And these were the young leaders that wanted to take that next step in their career. And we identified 16 of the high potentials, and we put them through training over many months. There was 5 or 6 sessions. And the team came to me, the China team, and said, would you like to give training for the G2 team, the 16 people? And I volunteered. And then I started to prepare materials, training materials. What do I present? I made it specific about leadership, because as they go to the next level, what are some tips that might help them in leadership? And when I did that, I trained 2 different occasions. Once was on leadership and once was on operational leadership. Boy, that was in 2018, when we were also starting to have those tough times. It was something that just felt so good to me. And it felt like, again, the purpose you talk about. It's like, well, maybe I'm looking at this wrong. I'm an executive that always focuses on the bottom line. Why shouldn't I focus more on the people? And it felt so good. And, if you focus on your people, you develop your people, and they become good leaders, it only makes your job more, makes your job easier, right? As a leader, because they're more capable. And it always sounds easy, but that was when I got that spark, 2018. I was like, boy, this might be something that when I retire someday, I might enjoy doing. And then I think finally then that tough time laying off almost 600 people in 2019. It was the summer of 2019. It was July. I know exactly. It was July 2019. And I started searching, talking to these friends that I had come across that went through coaching, and said, okay, where's the best coaching institute? And I signed up by August of 19, and I started the program by November of 19. So it happened pretty fast. Once I committed, it happened fast. But that's how it sort of transpired.
And where was this institute?
The institute is above my point the right way here, above my shoulder. It's called IPEC. It's the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. And if you search the internet, you'll find it. I believe it's the best out there. The founder of the Institute, Bruce Schneider, has a fascinating life story, and he founded this many years ago. And the one difference of this institute, it also focuses on energy leadership, what they call core energy leadership. And you talk about energy, you talk about how you show up in life. And it's accredited by the International Coaching Federation, the ICF, which is popular in North America. Most companies require coaches to have an ICF certification, so it's accredited by the ICF. So I started this, and like a lot of things I've started in life, maybe a little apprehensive at first, even though I knew it was going to be good for me, I was very nervous the first training. And I signed up for Seattle because it was the closest to Shanghai. So I had to take, at my own expense, there's 3 in-person trainings, November, February, and May. And of course, with COVID now, the May training got canceled. We did do the November and February in person. But through that experience, I realized how strong IPIC was. But you get over the initial nervousness. And what was the nervousness for me is because we talked on the first podcast that I'm very introverted. So it takes me a while to warm up until I get to know people. And right away, when you're thrown into this training, it's coaching, one-on-one coaching, you're practicing with your peers. And I was a little nervous about that. I was more on I was trying to study the process of coaching. What is the technique? What are the tools I have to use, rather than just letting it flow? And by the middle of the second training in February, it finally sort of sunk in, and I said, wow, this is powerful, and no looking back since then. So it's like a lot of things in my life, it's been quite a journey. But the one thing about coaching, it really makes you look at yourself. It makes you study yourself first before you can coach others. So it forces you to look at who you are. What do you want? What are your values? We talked about values before. And when you start searching in your soul for who you are, then a lot of these light bulbs go off in your head, and you say, well, no wonder you were ready to quit in 2015. Your number one core value is family. Of course, you were separated from your family. No wonder in 2018 or 19, when you laid off people, no wonder you couldn't sleep. Well, it's because it's totally conflicting with one of your core values. And then a lot of things started to make sense, and you start to be more aware of who you are, what makes you happy, what do you want out of life. And I am just so grateful that I went through the program, Kevin. And I think, whether I use it right away, I've already set up my coaching company, you can see there. But I absolutely believe it makes me a better leader with what I'm doing now. And I'm coaching now for free. I got certified in July, and here it is in August. So I'm coaching for free. A lot of the company people, a lot of young leaders in China as well. And there's nothing that gives you more satisfaction than that. And that's the place I'm at now. And, you talked about the journey, what led you to the steps, but whatever those steps were, I look back, I'm so grateful it led me here, because this feels like the purpose that I was meant to it's my purpose in life, to help others and to help young leaders. It really fits me now.
That's amazing. And I'll tell you why, because I meet so many people who, they talk about purpose, but when you ask them, what are your core values? And they say that, they tell me family, usually it's family, trust, being successful. And then you say, well, what is success? And they can't define it, or it's very material in a way which is, I need this and this and this. And that's my idea of success. And so many people who I used to consider, oh, you're very successful. And they always refer to something called the number, and having a number. And I was like, I used to think to myself, and even I tried to give myself a number, but I was like, I don't know what this means. And I think it's because it wasn't a value truly to me. But it's amazing that you've found, from tapping into deeply who you are and understanding that who your core values are, and then you've built your purpose around that. And part of that is, I guess, sharing knowledge, or helping others reach their potential, as you know, your strapline is their potential for more. To, I guess that's what your purpose is in life. Would that be right?
No question. And you know, it didn't really all sink in until the past year, but reflecting back, I mean, I really like where I'm at now. I love the fact that I went through IPEX program. I love the fact that I'm able to help our company people. So just think about that. I mean, I went through this program. I think I mentioned to you, it's not sponsored by the company. I did it at my own expense. It's not an inexpensive program. It was about $12,000 for the program. So it was, and I didn't. It's an investment, and I looked at it that no matter what happens, because when I started the training in November of 19, I wasn't really sure how much I would enjoy it, and I wasn't really sure, but there was so many, the people I talked to through the admissions process, and so many people, you know, they said so many positive things and how it was life altering. And I was skeptical. I said, come on, life changing. Come on, are you kidding? But now, having gone through it, I have to say it's life changing, and it changes the view when you look at situations now. I mean, I always thought I was not judgmental, thought I was open-minded, but now I'm even more so, perhaps, that I really don't judge people or situations nearly as much as I might have in the past after this training. So those kind of things, I think it can only help you. And you remember on the first podcast, I gave the 3 advice to young leaders, and the second one was never stop learning.
Yeah.
Never stop learning, because, and that goes for yourself, for your own personal development. And that's sort of how I feel now. I've learned more about myself the past year than I have about coaching, perhaps. But I feel like now I have more to offer at work. I have more to offer in my personal life, more to offer in my relationships. And I really hope I can look back in a year through the people that I'm working with at work, and I hope I can see a change in them too, through the coaching that I'm giving. And there's just, when I think about that, I just smile, because there's nothing greater I can think that I can give, right? You know, I always say, you try to make the world around you a better place every day. And I mean, what other way can I do that except by working with the young leaders in our company and teaching them from the mistakes I made, so hopefully they won't make all the same mistakes. And yeah, I'm just in a very good place right now, Kevin. I'm just very grateful for how that journey led me here.
This is wonderful, Brian. I've got a couple of questions to sort of finish up, but for a leader who's experienced, maybe inexperienced, do you think they need to be coaching their people, their staff, not just leaders, but the managers, or is coaching something that should be pervasive through an organization?
I think the principles of coaching, yes. You know, the kind of coaching institute like IPEC and anything that's accredited by the ICF, you know, you're talking professional, really professional coaching. It's not where somebody just goes for a weekend and they get a certificate and says, I'm a coach. Because there's a lot of people that say they're coaches, but they haven't really gone through the proper training. So having said that, you know, a lot of the things you learn about coaching, like I said, is first about awareness. And as a going through coaching training, you learn to be aware of yourself and learn who you are. But then it's all about, when you work with clients, about getting them to realize who they are. So that awareness comes first, the consciousness comes first. Now, when you apply that to organizations, I think whether a leader should coach, I would say you have to be a little careful there, right? Because they have to be trained properly on how to coach. But I would say the principles of coaching, raising awareness of people, teaching them maybe techniques on and tools on how to deal with situations and deal with different people. The fundamental things that you get out of coaching, I think every organization, because it's a learning process. It's just a learning process. It's becoming more aware. It's becoming more conscious. And all those things, if a company had a culture that was already doing that, then I would say maybe they don't need a strong coaching culture. But if a company has lost its way, maybe they've lost their sense of direction. What is their purpose? What do they stand for? Then I think a company could greatly benefit from a coaching culture, starting at the top, working with because let's face it, in a corporation, it has to be the executive team from the CEO and the CEO staff. The executive team on down has to lead and is capable in a lot of companies of developing and creating and sustaining their own corporate culture. But if for whatever reason a company becomes too focused on the bottom line and they stop caring about their people, if they just lose their way, maybe they just aren't good at strategizing and they totally miss a trend in the industry, then I think a coaching culture can definitely help. It helps them sort of align with, again, back to your podcast, Kevin, your Cocktail Leadership. It's about purpose.
Yeah.
And it's not just people that lose their purpose, it's companies that lose their purpose. So I'm not sure if I answered your question directly, but I think definitely some companies could benefit from a coaching culture.
Yeah, here's my final question. It's a scenario. So I work in a company, not me, just generally, and the leadership team, haven't really developed leaders. There hasn't been training, or there isn't the finances to really support. You paid for your own training, but to really develop leaders through coaching or send them on coaching courses. But I'm a leader in this organization, not on the top tier, maybe some of the tiers below. And I see there's an importance in it and developing, and I want to develop my people. I want at least my team to do the best, but I hope that's infectious and maybe has a knock-on effect on some other teams who look at the performance of my team from coaching and say they gel, they seem to be developing individually, but as a team. What can I do where I don't really get, I guess, buy-in or support from an executive? What can I do as a leader in that situation?
Well, again, it's always better to have the buy-in,
Mm-hmm.
but sadly, I know there are a lot of companies that probably would react the way you just described, that there's no budget. It's always the money, the bottom line first before the people. It's, oh, we have no budget for that, sorry. I think as a leader, all of us are leaders is the first thing. And even if you're not trained as a coach, if you go through and work with a coach, I'm sure that as a leader, I think I've been coaching for 30 years, Kevin. And just because I have a certification now doesn't mean I wasn't coaching. But I didn't realize that I was coaching because I was doing a lot of the things that the tools of the coaching training taught me about raising awareness, being open-minded, even things problem solving and how to problem solve, how to communicate with people. And so I think a leader, the best thing a leader can do is provide the leadership in terms of, the things you can control, the things you can influence. And the first one is setting an example. Set an example. Be on time for meetings. Set clear direction for your team. So even though the company might not have a clear purpose or direction, doesn't mean that you and your department and your team can't have a clear purpose and direction. And even if the company may not recognize people or reward people for their contributions, it doesn't mean you can't do it as a leader in your department, right? And some of those things don't take money. They don't take a corporate budget. It just takes the individual's own leadership to do those things. So that would be the advice I was give. There's probably more influence that you can have as a leader than you think. And that's just by showing up. Show up, set an example. That would be what I would say, Kevin, to any leader that had that question.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us on this bonus episode of Cocktail Leadership. And I think really you can tell everybody where they can find you, because part of Cocktail Leadership is hoping to start conversations and some dialogue around the themes you've talked about. So how can people reach out and talk to you?
Yes, I just started a company, and it's just kicking off. I'm doing it on the side, frankly, because we all have day jobs, but they can reach me at briankaisercoaching@gmail.com. If they have questions, again, briankaisercoaching@gmail.com. I'd love to talk with them. But really my pleasure to be with you, Kevin. I love talking purpose and in life and in work. So really happy to be back with you anytime.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin.